Power. A word drenched in blood, ambition, and destiny. History remembers kings as warriors, conquerors, and gods. But behind the crowns of men, there stood women who ruled not from the shadows, but from thrones carved by their own will. These were not fragile figures in jewels. They were storms in silk, thunder wrapped in grace. They shaped empires, commanded armies, and changed the course of civilizations. These are the top 10 most powerful queens in history, women who proved that a crown's true weight is measured in courage. Number 10. Queen Elizabeth I of England. When Elizabeth Tudor took the throne in 1558, England was crumbling. Religious wars had torn the country apart, the treasury was empty, and foreign powers waited to strike. But Elizabeth was no ordinary ruler. She understood that image was power. She crafted herself into a symbol, the Virgin Queen, untouchable, divine, and destined to rule. Under her reign came Shakespeare, Drake, and the rise of England's navy. She faced rebellion, assassination plots, and betrayal from her own blood. But she ruled for 45 years, alone, and left behind an empire so mighty that her very name became legend. When she died, she said, "My heart was never set on worldly crowns, yet I have had one." A queen who never married, because she was married, to England. Number 9. Catherine the Great of Russia. She was not born royal, she became it. A German princess who arrived in Russia as a teenage bride and overthrew her own husband to seize the throne. Catherine ruled for more than 3 decades, turning Russia into one of Europe's great powers. She modernized the army, built schools, and invited thinkers and philosophers from across the continent. She expanded the empire's borders until it touched the Black Sea, the Baltic, and beyond. But her path was soaked in betrayal. She faced court conspiracies, peasant revolts, and endless whispers that a woman could not rule. Catherine didn't just rule. She reshaped an empire with her mind sharper than any sword. Even Napoleon feared the nation she built. Number 8. Cleopatra VII of Egypt, the last pharaoh and perhaps the most misunderstood woman in history. Cleopatra wasn't the temptress Roman writers painted her to be. She was a strategist, fluent in 9 languages, trained in politics, science, and war. She ruled a land surrounded by enemies and outplayed them all, through wit, charm, and absolute intellect. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony were not just romances, they were acts of survival. When Rome came for Egypt, she didn't hide. She faced them with steel in her eyes. And when defeat became certain, she refused to be paraded through Rome as a trophy. Her final act, taking her own life, was her last declaration of power. Centuries later, her name still means mystery, beauty, and unstoppable will. Number 7. Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. A girl of just 18 who woke up one morning to find herself ruler of the largest empire the world had ever known. When Victoria took the throne, Britain was entering the industrial age, and she became its heartbeat. She ruled for 63 years, a record that stood for over a century. Her reign saw railways, electricity, modern medicine, and a network of colonies that covered the globe. But behind her strict morality and iron discipline was a woman of deep emotion. After the death of her beloved Prince Albert, she wore black for the rest of her life, and ruled through grief with the same firmness she ruled her empire. By the time she died, 1 in every 4 people on Earth lived under her rule. They called it the Victorian era, and she, the mother of an empire. Number 6. Wu Zetian of China. The only woman in over 3,000 years to rule China as emperor, not empress-emperor. She began as a concubine, but her intelligence, memory, and political instincts were unmatched. Through patience, she climbed the ladder of power until she controlled the dragon throne itself. Her rule was one of reform and vision. She promoted merit over birthright, supported scholars, and expanded education for women. But to secure her place, she also eliminated anyone who stood in her path, generals, ministers, even family. Even to her enemies, she was ruthless. To her empire, she was stability. When she died, she left behind no inscription on her tomb, because greatness, she believed, didn't need words carved in stone. Number 5. Empress Dowager Cixi of China. They called her the Dragon Lady, but behind that title was unmatched political genius. Cixi entered the imperial palace as a concubine, but through intelligence and manipulation, she became the true power behind the throne. For nearly 50 years, emperors came and went, but she ruled from behind the curtain. She preserved China's sovereignty at a time when the world's great powers sought to tear it apart. She modernized the military, built factories, and introduced electricity to the Forbidden City. Yet she was also feared, accused of decadence, even of poisoning rivals. History remembers her as both protector and destroyer, a woman who balanced tradition and change in a nation fighting for its soul. Number 4. Queen Nefertiti of ancient Egypt. Her face, immortalized in sculpture, became the symbol of perfection, but her true beauty lay in her power. Alongside her husband Akhenaten, she revolutionized Egypt's religion, declaring that there was only one god, Aten, the sun itself. It was a radical act that shook Egypt to its core. As chaos rose, Nefertiti's image began to appear in temples as equal to the pharaoh, a partner, not a consort. Some records suggest that after Akhenaten's death, she ruled alone under a different name. Her reign marked the dawn of a new Egypt, one that dared to defy centuries of belief. Even today, her name means the beautiful one has come, and she came to change everything. Number 3. Queen Isabella I of Castile. A queen with unbreakable faith and a heart forged in fire. At a time when Spain was torn apart by religious conflict and political division, Isabella united the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon through sheer will. Together with her husband Ferdinand, she ended centuries of Muslim rule in Spain, a victory that marked the birth of a new empire. She funded Christopher Columbus's voyage, opening the door to the New World. But her legacy is also dark. The Inquisition, persecution, and forced conversions that scarred generations. Isabella believed she was serving God, but in doing so, she reshaped the world itself. Her rule began Spain's golden age, and her crown shone brighter than any king's. Number 2. Queen Hatshepsut of Egypt. Long before Cleopatra, there was Hatshepsut, the first woman to call herself pharaoh. She ruled not as queen, but as king, donning the royal beard and commanding absolute authority. She expanded trade with faraway lands like Punt, bringing gold, incense, and treasures never before seen in Thebes. Her temple still stands carved into cliffs, defying time itself. After her death, her stepson tried to erase her name from history, but you can't erase a woman who built her own eternity. Hatshepsut proved that leadership had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with vision. Number 1. Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. In the sands of Syria rose a queen who dared to defy Rome. When her husband was assassinated, Zenobia didn't grieve, she took command. She led armies across deserts, conquering Egypt and Syria, uniting tribes and kingdoms under her rule. She wore armor into battle, rode at the head of her troops, and declared herself equal to the emperor. For a moment in history, the might of Rome trembled before a woman. But when Aurelian's legions finally captured her, Zenobia stood proud, adorned in jewels, unbroken in spirit. She told her captors, "I am no slave. I am a queen." Her rebellion was crushed, but her legend blazed brighter than ever. Zenobia wasn't just powerful. She was unstoppable. From palaces of marble to deserts of gold, these queens left behind more than empires. They left proof that true power is not given, it's taken. They were visionaries, warriors, dreamers, and revolutionaries. They changed faiths, rewrote laws, and redefined kingdoms. And in their silence, centuries later, you can still hear the echo of their crowns. Because power doesn't belong to men or women, it belongs to those who dare to seize it. And history, it seems, remembers those who never asked for permission. If you believe these stories still matter, subscribe, because the past is not dead, it's waiting to be told again.